Be ready. 15 seconds. Questions of equity apart the mode and scale of subsidizing has had two effects. One has been to induce a faster rate of growth of enrollments at this level than is otherwise likely to have taken place. In several parts of the country, the fees charged for higher education have remained unchanged for decades, and the rising costs have been almost wholly covered by the subsidies from government. Higher education has therefore become almost free for those who are in a position to meet the other related expenses. The other effect has been to encourage in this sphere, particularly in the last decade, a kind of entrepreneurship with little commitment to the goals of higher education, where the rate of subsidy is high and the rest of the expenditure can be almost wholly covered by fees collected from students. A college can be started and run with very little exertion on the part of the sponsors. In Delhi, 95% of the excess expenditure of a college on all approved items over its income from fees is met by the University Grants Commission. The sponsoring body, whether it is a private agency or a local authority, needs therefore to cover only a very small fraction of the total expenditure on running a college. Naturally, there is no dearth of entrepreneurs for starting colleges with an eye on the patronage and influence they can exercise through their control over them. Though the extent of subsidy is not as high elsewhere, the position is not very different in several other parts of the country where liberal grants in aid are given by state governments to colleges. The main qualification required of the promoters of higher education under these conditions is only that they have the contacts for securing the necessary financial and other support from the powers that be. Where the rate of subsidy is not so high, some adjustments are called for. These are usually made in the fees charged from students and in the teacher student ratios maintained. Thus, the annual fee for undergraduate education ranges all the way from less than rupees 100 per student the colleges in Rajasthan to well over rupees 300 per student in Bombay. The average number of students assigned to a teacher also varies from as low as 12 in some areas to more than twice that figure in others. This subsidy has to be discontinued. All this has usually a decisive impact at the higher levels of decision making and administration in the universities. For both the representatives of college managements and of teachers secure representation in the various bodies of the universities of which they form a part. Changes in the structure and content of courses are therefore usually resisted if they call for more appointments at the college level than the managements are prepared to make, or if much more effort is required on the part of the existing staff. If any teaching is organized at the university level, as is generally done for postgraduate courses, the principle of representation has to be usually given considerable weight irrespective of academic considerations. The various sectional interests involved have to be taken into account also when examiners are appointed by universities, and sometimes even when the results of the examinations are declared. Universities as organized now are in fact highly vulnerable to pressures of various kinds. The representation given to colleges, the system of elections to the more important decision making bodies, and direct dependence on government grants are all potential instruments for gaining influence and exerting pressure within universities. It is not surprising, therefore, that when teachers and students are also free to participate in political activity, universities get affected very quickly by all the undercurrents and conflicts in the society of which they are a part. One of the major problems now is that while political forces are able to gain entry very easily, the universities do not have the means for effectively coping with them. Under these conditions, growth in size beyond a point becomes a particularly serious handicap. Not only are there few economies of scale to be gained by such expansion, but diseconomies set in through their greater vulnerability to pressures from outside and from within. This has become a major problem for many Indian universities. The growing tendencies towards regionalism in the country have also had serious effects on higher education. These tendencies are generally expressed in demands relating to the medium of instruction. Some of these demands are based on sound educational principles and are wholly justifiable, but in their most extreme form, they usually indicate either ignorance of the minimum requirements of higher education, or inward looking conduct of a kind that places considerations of a selfish character above these requirements. In practice, both have been in evidence. More specifically, the problem arises when instruction at the postgraduate level is sought to be given in the regional languages. For most of the relevant literature at that level is usually not available.